42.5 miles. That's the distance between Everett's high school home court and this court here at Bramlage Coliseum that she now considers home, and one that she's had her sights set on for quite some time. If you're like me, then a few laps around the track per week seems like more than enough. It is senior day for the Wildcats today, as you mentioned, but it's far from being your typical senior day. I mean, with the pandemic, it's 2020, nothing's really typical at this point. It's another busy weekend for Kansas State athletics, with track and field and baseball all on slate. Welcome back to Big 12 now on ESPN+, as Kansas State leads West Virginia heading into the bottom of the 8th inning. You guys are up 1-0 at the half, a rather dangerous lead in the game of soccer. How do you keep the pressure applied going into the second half? Welcome back to Big 12 now on ESPN+. I'm Kelsey Bigelow, and tomorrow is International Pay It Forward Day. That's something that the Wildcats know all about since head coach Pete Hughes has been here in his 19 Ways initiative. 19 ways to make a positive impact on the community through things like Christmas drives, toy drives, food drives, you name it, they've done it. And he says really what it is for him is he loves watching the guys grasp the idea of community service and giving back to who's given to them. He says he loves the idea, and really, he says the guys are the ones taking the ownership and coming up with the ideas. Brian? Thanks, Brian. You know, baseball players' superstitions, they go hand in hand. Never stepping on a chalk line, repetitive batting stances, even ditching maybe an elbow guard like Kokoska, you name it, it's there. But for Dylan Phillips, it's a pre-game energy drink. When I spoke to him earlier this week, he wasn't too fond of the idea of calling it a superstition, but instead maybe just he needed more energy before the game. But guys, I don't know what flavor he had this morning, but I'm pretty sure he's probably going to be drinking a little bit more of it. Last week here in Manhattan, we curled up under our blankets inside as we dealt with below freezing temperatures. This week, we welcome the Wildcat baseball team back to Toynton Family Stadium. Some might call it a Midwest thing, but regardless of what you call it, the Wildcats are taking their home field for the first time in nearly 350 days. Welcome back to Big 12 now on ESPN+. I'm Kelsey Bigelow, and guys, few people get as excited about their job as Kansas State pitching coach Buck Taylor. When I asked him about it, he said, quote, "Best job in America." When you're around a head coach that's so positive, so engaging, and delivers a great message every day, he says he's excited to hear the message that he's going to deliver to the guys. All in all, Coach Taylor says he loves following Coach Hughes because he's doing it the right way. Brian? It is senior day for the Wildcats today, as you mentioned, but it's far from being your typical senior day. I mean, with the pandemic, it's 2020, nothing's really typical at this point. But with that possible extra year of eligibility, the 20 Wildcats that are being honored today really have a pretty big decision on their shoulders. We talked to Coach Kleiman about the situation earlier this week, and he said it was really the first time they even discussed it during their team meeting, and he told his seniors just to sit back, enjoy the week with their teammates, enjoy the game, and enjoy the atmosphere one last time for sure, and then to take the emotion out of it. But guys, obviously that's a lot easier said than done. Senior defensive tackle Drew Wiley said this is something he's thought about a lot and that him and his teammates have actually talked about nearly every day because it's just an unusual time. Brian? Welcome back to Toynton Family Stadium. I'm Kelsey Bigelow, and Mike, earlier this game you talked about your keys to victory for K-State, and one of those was keeping the ball down when pitching. And that's something that Coach Buck Taylor has stressed since day one. As a matter of fact, when head coach Pete Hughes brought in pitching coach Buck Taylor, he asked him about equipment request. He made one simple request, and that was a string. He wanted a string to put at the knee of every batter, and he wanted every single pitch to be below that knee. I asked pitching coach Buck Taylor about that string earlier this week, and he said to this day, it's still out in the bullpen, and it's something they talk about every day. He says for 3 years, it hasn't said a single word, yet it's the best coach out there. It tells you when you're good and tells you when you're bad without telling you anything at all. Guys, it's said that hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do in sports. So when you step into that batter's box, it's a pretty tall task, especially it's even bigger when you have a couple base runners on. But for Nick Goodwin, he says he steps back and thinks of 5 words: relax and intensify the eyes. That's advice that he got from his grandfather, who he says is one of his biggest influences in the game of baseball. Every time you break, it's a chance to fall apart and to give up. But it's also an opportunity to get better. Kansas State guard Rachel Ranke has been faced with that type of adversity and more than once, but she's used it as a way to improve her game mentally. Wildcat fans, it is time. 2 teams with campuses just 80 miles apart. 5 Kansas natives, and a game decided by just 7 points last time out. One team with 7 wins on the season, the other with 5. Jayhawks and Wildcats. It's the women's basketball Sunflower Showdown. Growing up, sports were always a big part of Heather Fortushnik's life. But at that time, those sports consisted of things like tackle football and hockey. Well, that competitive flame is still burning, but now Heather's using it as a way to fuel her love for golf, a game that her father introduced to her, and by the time she hit 6th grade, she had it sketched into her plans for the future. If you're like me, then a few laps around the track per week seems like more than enough. But for K-State track and field and cross-country runner Cooper Schroeder, add about 360 laps to that, and that's for a relatively short week.
For me, I try to hit around 90 to 95 miles a week, usually doubling runs about 2 to 3 times a week, then have like two workouts a week. And some days take the easy days easy when you're hurting, and try to hit it hard when you want to try to get better. So it's tough sometimes, but the main thing is just to recover and do it with the team. So yeah, there's some runs where I'm just like, maybe on like a 10 mile or 12 mile run, I just like want to stop and just walk home and give up and stuff. But then I'm like, that wouldn't really make me better, and that's not really why I'm doing this. So I just try to just make it through each day. I have a bad day and something like that, but there's good days and there's bad days, I'd say, in running, and the good days just make it so much worth, putting in the work and stuff. So you just got to get through the tough days and find motivation in anything you can.
While Schroeder's running schedule may differ just slightly from ours, I think it's safe to say we're all on the same page when it comes to eating.
I don't really stress too much about, going to get ice cream a couple days before the race or having some candy here and there and stuff like that. But definitely like before a big race, I'd probably say like definitely try to eat noodles or some type of carbs basically. And that probably doesn't even matter for my body. It's just like mentally, it makes me think I'm going to run fast the next day. So just try to get positive. The night before a big race is big for me, I'd say.
Schroeder is indeed fast. He actually holds the school record for the fastest 8K at 23 minutes and 54 seconds. Yeah, I'll take whatever pasta he's having. Until next time, I'm Kelsey Bigelow.